Hello and welcome to Against All Odds. This is another program that we're bringing to you as we showcase stories from people who've come from being victims to being survivors, and we always have different stories to share. Today we have a story that I hope will also inspire you as parents to make sure that you also take a look and get to know your children better. Joining me on the program today, I do have Sharon, and Sharon as a child was sexually molested, she was sexually abused, and she's here to tell us her story today. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I want to start off by asking you, just tell me a little bit about your upbringing. How was it like when you were growing up with yourself and the family? How was it like?
Okay, so my parents divorced when I was 4. And because my mom was not able to sustain all our needs, I had to be raised by my mom's young sister. And she was married to her husband, but they didn't have any children, so I became the one child. I was taken care of, the only child, had everything that I wanted. Then on holidays, when I'd go back to my mom's home, I would have to share the little bit with my other siblings. But in a nutshell, we were happy. Our mom showered us with love. We were brought up united and full of love for each other and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, it was a fairly happy setup.
Okay.
Fairly happy setup.
Let's move on into your story.
Yes.
If you can, just narrate to us what actually happened to you as a child.
Okay, so at the age of 8, I was sexually molested by a trusted neighbor. He lived right next door to my mom's house. It was on one such holiday. So back in the day, we didn't have, not every household had a TV set. So we'd go next door to watch programs, wrestling and whatever. And it was on one such night that he took advantage because he knew my mom would be away for work. My mom was a waitress and she usually used to work night shifts. So on one such night, she went away and I was next door with every other child from the neighborhood watching TV, and this man called me out, telling me that my mom was back. So out of excitement, I just rushed out of the house, but then he took me to a room in the back, telling me this is where my mom's house, where my mom was. Obviously, I knew a certain part of him was lying, but at the time I didn't know how to respond. I still gave myself the hope that my mom is in that back room. And so that is where he molested me. After he molested me, threatened to kill me if I ever talked about it. So I kept it as a secret for a good 10 years.
A good 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
When you kept it as a secret, did you do it out of fear? That, since he said he'd kill you? And
It was out of fear. For the greater part, it was out of fear. But as I grew older and started understanding that, no man, this man is not going to harm me, it was now out of, will people understand if I ever tell them this is what happened? Because when we were growing up, sex was taboo. We were never allowed to talk about it or do anything sexual. So I was afraid of being victimized because of that one act, So then I kept it for a secret longer. Otherwise, it was just out of fear most of the time.
Okay. And growing up, did this affect you as you were growing up? Where how did you feel? I know maybe it might not be vivid, but maybe just some recollection of how you felt as you were growing up, how it actually affected your childhood as well.
I felt dirty a lot of the times, which is why I've always wanted clean space around me. Another part of it was I had to deal with a lot of shame. I wasn't comfortable being naked in front of other girls in school because I was a boarder. I wasn't comfortable being naked in their presence. I wasn't comfortable being alone in confined spaces. So the fear still carried on. But then I also became like almost like a rebellious child. Or maybe I was perceived that way because of the way that I was handling myself, trying to deal with effects that I didn't actually know existed. I was rebellious in high school. My grades dropped drastically. Tried to pick it up, but I didn't do so well as I should have, according to the knowledge and the intelligence that I know I have. I always wanted to party. I used that as an escape. it would allow me not to go back to that one night or to deal with the pain and the shame that came along with it. As long as I'm partying, I didn't have time to think about it, and that's what I always try to do, avoid thinking about it.
When you were partying, any, abuse of alcohol, substances that you'd engage in?
Oh yes, oh yes. I'd try to get intoxicated as much as I could. Funny enough, when we were growing up, there were a lot of nightclubs that opened in the afternoon, like from about 12 to 6 o'clock. I will not mention names. But yeah, those nightclubs were usually full of young children like me, teens, early 20s and stuff like that. So it was almost like a safe space in a very unsafe environment. And I would live for the weekend, would go there on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, like every other weekend, would party religiously. And for me, during that time, it would make me forget everything. It would make me create a new, like a new perspective for my life, where I didn't have to go through shame, where I didn't have to go through all of this trauma. It was just a fun escape, and that's what it was for me. Yeah. But it also became like a drug because I lived for that. Yeah.
And your parents, of course, you just tell them, I'm going to hang out with my
Movies,
friends.
Friends and whatnot. You'd never say that. They'll never allow you to do that.
So you'd go to, let's say, leave the house afternoon,
in the
12,
afternoon, yes,
1.
and be back home by 6, 7. So they would never
they'll never notice anything.
They would never notice anything.
What
except
about the
just smelling
intoxication?
clothes.
Would they notice that maybe you're
you
intoxicated?
had to take care of yourself. Make sure you got home sober. Drink a lot of water. By the time you get home, you weren't sure that you've been taking alcohol and stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm just going to take you back a little bit in regards to your neighbor. After the incident happened, did you ever go back to, even if you're told go watch TV or, he's going to take care of you, did you ever, go back there, or you'd find, trying to resist your mother telling you to go there because you obviously knew that you were not safe in his presence?
No, I never did. And for a while, I didn't want to go outside the house, not just in the yard. I didn't want to go outside of the house because in between our houses, there was like a short fence. So if I'm in our yard, but outside of the house, I could easily see the people next door. So for a while, I don't know how long, I don't remember how long it was for. For a while, I didn't want to be outdoors, but I don't think anyone ever noticed the difference or ever thought of it to be strange because no one ever asked me.
It was just as normal as can
Almost, yes.
Okay. And, were you more inclined to have male friends, female friends? How was it like when you were growing up as well in that regard?
Funny enough, I felt, I don't want to say safer. I felt I had more fun with guy friends. Okay. I felt maybe it was because guy friends are less judgmental than girlfriends, right? So I think that's the reason why I ended up having a lot of male friends growing up. But it was never out of a desire to have any romantic relationships with them. It was just pure friendship. Girls spot things and they can easily tell when something is not right. Women are usually more alert than men are when it comes to certain things. And I think I didn't want to be in a place where where I became vulnerable in that regard, where my life was out there and people could easily tell there's something wrong with Sharon. She's probably going through stuff. I didn't want to give people that room. So I felt safer with guys, playing with guys growing up.
Okay. Well, as you can hear for yourself, Sharon explaining her ordeal that happened to her when she was just 8 years old. A trusted neighbor, they said, and he actually took advantage of the situation, also threatening her to say if she was to report the issue to anyone, he would kill her. Of course, this had an effect on her because over the years, she decided to indulge in dangerous activities, including substance abuse of alcohol, being able to party because she felt she was in a safe space, but also being able to hide it from her parents who were not able to notice it. But right after the break, when we come back, we'll be talking more about how she moved from this phase into the next phase of her life, where she managed to overcome certain things. This is Against All Odds. We'll be right back. Don't you go anywhere. Welcome back to Against All Odds. Now, just before the break, we were talking to Sharon, and she was just explaining to us what happened to her when she was just a child. Now, obviously, she was acting out because these were some of the effects of what happens when you're abused as a child. And she was now acting out in different ways where she felt like this was the only way she could cope because she was trying not to think of what happened to her when she was a child. But Sharon, you just before the break, you were now talking about how you wanted to hang out with boys more than girls, and how you'd go clubbing in the afternoon because at the time there were clubs that were there in the afternoon, and you'd hide all these things from your parents, and they would be able to notice it. How long did this go on for?
Oh, well, this was from about 15. So that it's about 3 years before I now spoke about it. I mean, I had already, I think, become skillful in terms of hiding stuff from my parents if I was able to hide the abuse from them, you know. And I also was very secretive, you know. I never used to talk about a lot of things. I used to keep things to myself, only share as and when I felt the need to, or when I felt that it would benefit me. That's when I'd share stuff. But the gory stuff, I never used to talk about.
Okay. What changed when you were 18? What was the turning point for you at 18 years? What happened when you said, okay, fine, I'm now taking a different path? What happened at this point?
Okay, so the clubbing for me was an escape, like I said. And there were times when I would want to prolong that escape. I would know, okay, so Sunday, I have to leave until the next Friday. So there were times when I would just pick up and go, like go to a friend's house and stuff like that. And my mom would be so worried and then come back after a day or two and be like, no, I was at a friend's house and stuff like that. So because of that, I got grounded. I could see the pain that it was causing my mom, the level of losing her trust, and the way my siblings were also, you know, not happy about my behavior, and a lot of family members were talking about me. That's not who I was. That's not who I was. That's not who I wanted to be in any case. And so for me, that was the time when I made the decision, you know what, I need to face whatever it is that I'm really going through. I need somewhere safe where I can open up and pour out my heart. And at the same time, it was during the same time that a very good friend of mine called Marshall was trying to, like, he kept encouraging me to come to church because he was already rooted in this youth ministry, and he wanted me to be involved in that because he knew I would find a level of healing from that. But at the time, I didn't want to. But when I came to that point where I came to myself and said to myself, I needed to make some changes, and this was going to be the first step, that's when I started going to church, and I was about 18.
So 18, you're now going to church. How did you find it? Was it... You know, because I can imagine coming through from, you know, the clubbing life, it's totally different. It's loud, it's fun, it's crazy.
I'll tell you a story. So Marshall used to choreograph the youth group's dance group, right? And when he started inviting me to church, he was inviting me, telling me to come join their dance group. And I thought, what fun could they be? What sort of songs do they dance to in church? So the very first day that I went to, they were playing a song by Mary Mary called Shackles. But then this was a song that they played at the club as well. So I thought, oh, well, this is nice. They play club music in church. But then it was a Christian song. I didn't know that. It was a gospel song. And then later on, I actually realized, no, man, there's a lot of very good gospel music, like from the likes of Kirk Franklin, in our time, you know. And then I got hooked. Like, church was great. I didn't know church could be fun. Church is fun. I never knew that. And because of that, I stayed. And then I started growing in my walk with Christ.
Okay. And then how long after, you know, you've joined the church did you decide it's time for me to open up about what happened to me when I was a child?
I think it took me about a few months. I was very keen on knowing God and drawing closer to Him. And I always felt a sense of peace, even in all of this trauma, in all of the storm that I was going through. And so I felt I needed to connect some more. And it was in one such meeting with the youth pastor where he was, you know, trying to help me find ways to connect, you know, encouraging me, read the Bible more, pray more, spend more time in prayer and things like that, you know. It was in one such meeting that I then said, you know what, there's something that I'm holding on to. This is what happened to me, and I don't know if it's affecting my growth in Christ or anything like that, because I'm harboring unforgiveness and I'm so bitter. And yeah, so it was from then that I spoke about it in detail. And then we now went to talk about it, like, with my family. He had to tell my my family.
Okay, so the pastor was encouraging you to tell your family.
Yes, we had to.
When you told your family, who were the family members that were told about the incident?
So there was my mom, my older brother Gerald, and my aunt, she's late now as well, and my uncle, he's also late.
And what was their reaction when they heard about this?
Oh, they were mad. They wanted to go and strike the next door neighbor, but unfortunately that time I was based in the rural areas, which was a good thing because I think it would have ended badly. So I had, remember I told you I was raised by my aunt and her husband. Her husband was a magistrate, and they wanted to involve him where the law was concerned and stuff like that. But then at that time, I didn't want to go through the process of having to report the case, talking about it all over again. I didn't know what to expect. I just wanted to heal. I was doing it for me. I wanted to heal from it. I wanted to deal with the bitterness that I was carrying in me. That's all I wanted. When I spoke about it, that's what I was seeking. Not necessarily seeking justice, but I know, of course, justice in one way or the other was served when I spoke about it.
Okay. How did it affect your mother? How did it affect your aunt? You know, your then parents as well also took care of you. How did you see how it affected them?
They were, a certain part of me regrets not talking about it early enough, because I know I robbed them of an opportunity to take care of me. I robbed them of an opportunity to protect me from this man. In as much as they may not have been in control of the events of that night, they would have done everything in their power to protect me going forward, and I robbed them of that opportunity. I can never take that back. But the thing is, I saw in their eyes, I saw in the way they conducted, like they carried on the relationship with me. Afterwards, they treated me like an egg, like a baby, and, you know, trying to make up for it. But yeah, I guess those are the effects of not talking about it.
Well, I'm glad, you know, you found the opportunity to actually talk about it and open up, because at least you managed to get the help that you needed. Did you manage to go through counseling as well?
I did. I went through a lot of counseling. And it was in that counseling, in those counseling sessions, that I realized all this while, you know, I'd been going through different effects of sexual abuse that I didn't even know were effects. I didn't understand them. Like, for instance, at school, at high school, my friends, after a weekend away from the hostels, would come back with stories of their sex escapades, you know, with their boyfriends and stuff like that. And I would be so determined, like, the next time I hang out with my boyfriend, I'm definitely going to indulge, but I would fail to do it because of the fear that was in me, the fear that I struggled, you know, I struggled having sex for a long period of time. And I know a lot of people didn't understand that, or they didn't even know that. They thought I was promiscuous. I know a lot of family members thought the whole time that I was running away from home or clubbing and partying, I was busy engaging in sexual activities, which was not the case. I was afraid of sex. And this also followed me into my marriage. And I know that it's one of the reasons why my marriage failed. We failed to navigate our way through such effects, you know. Yeah, so I dealt with a lot of effects, and a lot of them I'm still dealing with even up until today. I think it's a lifetime process, but yeah, it's a journey, and we have to walk it.
You just talked about, you know, your marriage failed. I think when we just go for the break, we'll come back and we'll talk about that, you know, your journey into, you know, how you got married, you know, and how it actually failed, and, you know, everything else after that. All right, this is Against All Odds, and we are talking to Sharon. And remember, if you have a story that you'd like to share with us, remember, we can take your story. Make sure to contact us with the numbers that are appearing on your screen. We'll be taking a short break. Don't you go anywhere. Welcome back to Against All Odds. Now we get to continue with Sharon, as she was explaining that you were married. Let's talk about that. You were saying, you know, even when you're in high school, when your friends would come back and talk about their boyfriends, you felt some type of way. This must have been difficult for you, even going into marriage. Like you said, it also affected your marriage in the long run. How did you meet your partner? Did you tell them that this is what happened to you? And how did it affect your marriage in the long run?
Okay, so we met at church, safe environment. And when we now decided to take the relationship seriously, we were courting, I then spoke about my experiences, just so he knew that this is what I had been through. Not knowing that there were effects that were going to follow me into the marriage. I thought the journey was over, when I spoke about it and decided to forgive and started on this healing path. I didn't know the effects were going to trail behind me. So yeah, that's what I did. I just told him about it. You know, when you share your past issues or stories, just so the other person gets to know you better, and that's all I did. Yes.
Okay. So he was okay with it. Of course, he was supportive at the time. But then came the time, maybe as a couple, you were supposed to be more intimate, more, you know, coming together. And that was a bit difficult for you?
Yes. I struggled with a lot of things. I struggled with control. I wanted things done my way, and I know that it also played a part in affecting the marriage. Where control was concerned, I also didn't want him to initiate sex. If ever we were going to have sex, it was supposed to be on my terms, you know, and I know that played a major role in the fall of our marriage, because I was not comfortable with him initiating sex. In fact, it took me back to that one night. I felt like I was being sexually molested again or sexually abused again, you know, and I struggled with that. And when I now continued with counseling and I was talking about this to the person that was helping me, I then realized this was also one of the effects, because it didn't make sense to me that I loved him and I wanted to be intimate with him, but I was struggling in this regard. Not that I hated sex, I'm sure I did like sex, you know, but it was as an effect. I didn't understand it at the time, but yeah, that's what was happening.
Okay. So in the long run, you saw that you guys could not be together anymore, and you decided to part ways. How long were you married for?
For about 8 years.
For about 8 years.
Yes,
All right. Any children?
Yes, we have a son who just turned 18 and a daughter who turned 13 as well.
Oh, that's
beautiful
great.
Babies.
Beautiful babies. All right. That being said, you've gone through divorce. You've gone through, you know, being molested as a child. Not easy, you know, being in love, not easy, you know, now you realize that, you know, this, you know, what happened to me in my past also happened to affect my marriage. Have you thought about, you know, moving on, and are you still open to the prospect of, you know, having marriage again?
Oh yes. So on Facebook, I have a Facebook page called Corey Love, because I believe that love is beautiful. It's just the things that we go through, or the partners we choose, or the behaviors we tolerate. But love in itself is beautiful. So yes, I'm still open to it, and I'm hoping for it in the near future.
I like the sound of that. All right. So you wrote a book.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us about the book, the name of the book, the purpose of the book, how it inspired you, what inspired you to write it.
Okay. So the title of the book is called Dealing with Sexual Abuse. So in the book, I try to educate people on the different types of sexual abuse, the different types of effects, because they vary with each person and with each experience. And I also go into detail, like full details of how I was molested, how it affected me from that day on, during the time that I kept it as a secret, what are the things that I went through, the effects that I still struggle with even up until today. I talk about those things in detail. It's like me being vulnerable in my experience, but the purpose of it is to encourage the next person who may have been exposed to such trauma. I also encourage them to talk about it, not just talk about it, but also to report. In as much as I did not report, I think it's important, because then it helps us to eliminate the perpetrators of such horrid acts. And there's also a lot of work that I talk about in the book that we do as an organization, where we help young girls, young boys, because it's not just girls that are molested or abused in whatever way. Also young boys get to go through stuff like that. And if we don't open platforms for them to talk about it, then they live through their adult lives carrying this trauma, and it can be very devastating as an adult.
Holiday season is definitely upon us. Happy holidays. Christmas is coming up, and we also have the new year coming up. Of course, we are wishing you happy holidays, but we also need to be careful as parents and as guardians to make sure that we also take care of our children during the holidays. Also being able to watch who they're with. Do we trust this person? Even if we trust this person, are we sure that they'll be safe? That being said, Sharon, you've gone through this. You are more aware of some of the signs that parents can look out for. What would you say, parents can look out for, especially with the holidays that are coming up?
Okay, so I think it's also important for parents to have solid relationships with their children, because that way it's going to be easy to pick up certain traits that, you know, that are different from the usual. If your child is usually an outgoing person and suddenly they want to be indoors, then there should be something wrong. You can easily pick that up. And it's also important to watch the people that they play with, the people that they hang out with, because sometimes one of the effects that different types of sexual abuse can have on a person is that an abused person can become a perpetrator as well. So you may trust that, oh no, she's just with girls, oh no, she's just with her cousins, but you don't know what it is that they may have faced, and they could also be perpetrators too. It's not just left for the adults. Even amongst themselves as peers, one could be a perpetrator out of maybe not sexual abuse, but sexual abuse in the sense that they've been exposed to sexual activity at a very young age. So it's a whole lot of things that we as parents need to look out for. We need to know who our children hang out with, the sort of conversations that they have, and protect our babies.
Well, I got to say that you've come from being a victim to being a survivor. What you've gone through, you know, the experience itself, you know, from a very young age, 8 is not a joke at all, and having to go through sexual abuse from such a young age, having to deal with it by yourself is not easy, but being able to come through and say, you know what, maybe I need to look for help, maybe I need to talk about this so that I can be able to move on with my life, and even coming here on the show and talking about it so that someone else, you know, who's been through your situation knows how to handle this, would really appreciate it. And we're saying that you are definitely a survivor. You're no longer a victim, and that's how we look at you. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We definitely appreciate it. So that is Sharon, and she did explain her story, coming through from being a child that was molested when she was just 8 years of age, going through the phases and, you know, trying to figure out life, coming out a survivor at the end of it. It's great to know that she took the initiative to write a book explaining her ordeal, what happened to her as a child, so that you can actually be aware of this as a parent, and also, you know, her explaining some of the signs and symptoms you should look out for. It's great to know that she also has a foundation that not only helps the girls but also boys, and, you know, you as parents in the long run. We want to thank her so much for coming through on the program. This is Against All Odds, and coming from me, Rachel Mwenyeheli, and the crew, we want to say happy holidays to you, Merry Christmas, and also get to enjoy the new year that is coming through for 2024. Until we meet again next time right here, this is Against All Odds.